Hello, welcome to 30 Minutes. I'm Rick Anthony. Because my two guests today have such illustrious backgrounds as professionals and as business people, I wasn't quite sure whether to feature them on this program, 30 Minutes, or another program I host called the Entrepreneurs Network. I think you'll see the reason for my quandary as you get to know Molly Shepard and Peter Dean, who are partners in business, in parenting, and in marriage. More specifically, their new book, the title of which is The Bully-Proof Workplace: Essential Strategies, Tips, and Scripts for Dealing with the Office Sociopath, published by McGraw-Hill and released just this month. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you,
Nice
Rick.
to see you. Molly,
Nice
always
to
good to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your taking the time from your busy schedule, and I'm sure the book has just exacerbated what was already a busy schedule with your company. Mention, please, in I think it was 2006, you merged the company that you had founded and the company that you had founded and brought them together as what?
Well, the name of the company is The Leader's Edge, Leaders by Design.
Right.
And The Leader's Edge was founded by Molly, who's founded, another company well known in these parts called Manchester.
Oh, yes.
And she did that in 2000. And I founded Leaders by Design in 1986, mostly as a way of dealing with men.
Mm-hmm.
Leader's Edge, dealing with women. Leaders by Design, dealing with
Makes
men.
sense.
And we just were very creative and smushed the two words together, the two
And
names of the company.
you specialize in coaching and counseling senior level executives.
Our focus is to help senior executives advance their careers and do as best as they can
Uh-huh.
in their leadership, both men and women. I've been focusing in on senior women because it's more challenging for them to advance into the C-suite and to the executive committees.
You in fact had two previous books, right?
I did.
Two titles?
Actually, I have three.
Three?
Yes, Stop Whining
Stop
and
Whining.
Start Winning.
Yes.
Breaking into the Boys Club and Preparing for Your Prime Time, which is a retirement manual for women boomers.
Oh, really? I didn't know about that one. We should talk
That's a
about
hidden
that one.
secret.
Yes, because I have a special interest in the 50-plus market.
Yeah,
We'll talk about that. When was that published?
2 years ago.
Really? Okay, we should talk about that. Which brings us to the book, this book. The Bully-Proof Workplace: Essential Strategies, Tips, and Scripts for Dealing with the Office Sociopath. I love that phrase, the Office Sociopath, because we've all encountered it at some time or another in our careers. And maybe I've been guilty of it from time to time, but I hope unintentionally. Is it the consulting work that you've been doing for so long what led you to partner on creating this book, this manual?
Well, we both are executive coaches.
Yes.
And we encounter bullying through our clients.
That much of
we
it?
understand, yes.
Really?
And we've seen an increase just in our limited experience of 30 years in the business. And the literature is pointing in that direction as well. And then when we received a call from a local law firm to come in and explore with them the possibility of bullying cases being a revenue stream for law firms down the road, we became interested in it. And then one evening, we were sitting watching the evening news, and there was a case going on with the Miami Dolphins where one player was bullying another player.
Yes.
And we were confounded. That's why a 6'5", 312-pound man couldn't defend himself being bullied. And that started us thinking about, is there any correlation to the work we do? And we found a lot of connections.
What accounts for the increase in bullying?
I think there are a lot of reasons personally. And by the way, I would say in my 15 years of coaching just women that over 85% of them have experienced bullying, either directly or indirectly. And I do think that it might be somewhat epidemic, and it might be aggravated by the 24/7 hours that we work now, the stress in the workplace, layers of management, unclear responsibilities and accountability. There are a lot of things happening in our world of work which aren't very attractive. And then we have a broader culture that we see a lot on the news of, I think, rough, tough, abusive behavior and words, and so all of it's kind of come together now.
It's certainly in the modern era, less civil than it was when I was growing up,
Very much so.
and less consideration and respect for other people. Respect in the workplace is an area in which I've had some experience as well, because as I think you may know, most of my career has been as an HR consultant. And we went from discrimination in the workplace to respect in the workplace, which is much more encompassing. But that is still a big, big issue in the workplace. And bullying obviously is part of that, the lack of respect.
Especially if there's not a policy the company holds to
Yes.
every person.
Yeah.
Because then you have the person being bullied not feeling comfortable coming out and saying that,
Yes.
unless there's a policy already established in the company.
Especially if there's a gender difference, I would imagine.
Well, it's not a gender issue, though. It's a power issue, and
Yes.
that's we want to make that clear, and we make it clear in the book. Now, more women are bullied than men, and it's probably somewhere between 60 to 90% of the people that are doing the bullying also have position power over the
Yes.
person they're being
Yes.
bullied.
Yeah.
So the idea, being in HR, that we try to help our executives with leadership development, and if leadership is not there, then it's kind of
Yes.
bullying just starts to snowball, and more bullies beget more bullies, and then pretty soon
Early in the book, you define bullying. And again, for those of us who have been around for a while, bullying used to be meant to me, it was brawn, it was physical force. But the 21st century definition of bullying is not that definitive. It takes many, many forms.
Yeah,
Could you
okay.
define bullying, at least in the context of the book?
In the context of the book, bullying is not a one-off. It's very important that somebody who feels she or he is being bullied analyze that, because people can be crude or rude
Yes.
if they're under stress or angry at something. It is when somebody is actually targeted, where the bullying is repeated over time and it diminishes and demeans the individual. It makes them feel less productive. It
Right.
erodes self-esteem. It affects the ego. And the person can actually suffer emotional, if not, some physical
Yes.
ramifications from that. So it's a targeted sequence of events.
And it can be targeted in an insidious way, which we call that category of a liar, who really uses deception and gossip and rumor to get advantage over a person, especially one that is more talented than
Yes.
the bully. So
So it's not just brute force, which is what you do associate
Exactly.
and I've seen many brutish bullies
Mhm.
in my career, as I'm sure we all have. But the more insidious ones are also quite dangerous. The blocker who doesn't allow somebody to grow, the braggart who never allows anybody to speak.
No, I'm going to ask you about how you came up with those four
The four
titles,
Bs.
categories. Yes, 4 Bs. But hasn't social media, the internet, made this problem even worse? Because people can can hide behind the anonymity rather, of the internet, of emails, of cyber.
Yes, the short answer is yes. There is a movie out once that was called Self-Disclosure, and
Yes.
email was something that the story line
Mhm.
worked off of as very bullying and changing people's careers
Yeah.
as a result of that. We're talking about having our leaders make sure they have interpersonal competence and not bully, because we could all slip into bullying states. As Molly said, if it's a one-off,
Yeah.
we're human. But if it's a repeated event, targeted as one individual, it's something that's greatly cause for concern, because not only will that individual be affected by it, but the entire atmosphere of the work culture will be affected by it, and that will slow down productivity.
I once had a CEO who had a very strong presence, a strong personality, and he could be a bear, a wonderful bear. He was on your side, promoting your career, encouraging, etc. And in a split second, in a private conversation, or even in a conference room. He could cut your legs out from under you, absolutely humiliate you. And he did it, I don't think it was by design. It wasn't part of the, well, here's how I'm going to help good old Rick. I'm going to cut his legs out from under him, and he's going to learn a lesson.
But there's somebody who has an anger issue
Yes.
and can't control it, probably is a good subject for some therapy.
Yes, yes, yes.
But if the person that he's cutting the legs out from under, the Rick, that happens again and again and again and again, and Rick begins to feel, wow, it's definitely me that this person is hitting, then it becomes serious and it's worth analyzing. And we have a chapter in the book, interestingly enough, for people who might suspect they are bullies, to kind of check themselves.
Right. So there are instances when it may be the perception, an unfounded perception. You're not being bullied.
Well, in the
You're
book,
being directed rather harshly, but you're not being bullied.
Yeah.
sure, I mean, management is management,
Yeah.
and, setting out the course, giving direction is certainly well attuned, but we want to attach to that leadership skills. We believe leadership and management are different, and it's in the leadership skills compartmentalized in your interpersonal competence that helps someone who has a tendency to be a bully not to be a bully. Now, let's turn it around. The person being bullied has an excellent opportunity for growth in terms of learning how to deal with the bully.
Yes, yes.
And so that's what we're going for in the book, to reach out to those people who are being bullied and don't know what to do.
That's where the scripts come in, Bob.
I want to get to the scripts. The 4 titles or categories you came up with: liar, blocker, etc.
Braggart and
Braggart.
brute.
Where did they come from?
Well, 3
And
sources.
was it easy to come up with 4? Are there more than 4?
Oh, sure, and they're
Yeah.
blends.
Well, I mean, there's there are 3 sources for that. Our experience,
Right.
and qualitatively, after you work with executives, you start to your mind automatically starts to categorize. So that was one source of it. We used a little bit of behavioral psychology in terms of behavior analysis, and we used personality disorders as well. So in that respect, we came up with something that happens most frequently in these 4 types. Are there other types? Yes. But these 4 types are more, in our experience, more prevalent than the extremes. The extremes usually take care of themselves through law enforcement or whatever else. Would you say?
Yeah, and then it was cute, picking the B words like that, don't you think?
Yeah. I
Yeah,
thought that
the
was very
alliteration
good.
was
Yeah,
lovely.
that's very good.
Is brute the worst of the 4?
The
last
brute,
of the 4?
We think the liar is the worst.
Really?
well,
Why?
the brute is the scariest, because the brute is the loudest.
Yes.
And uses his body, or her body, usually a male, though, in that case, body, sound, language,
Yes.
voice, to really
I
intimidate
had one of those,
somebody.
too.
Threatening,
Yeah.
yeah.
The belier, and I experienced one early on in my career, is the person who slanders you behind closed doors, who finds a weakness or makes up a story and perpetuates that through the organization. And the person who's being bullied often doesn't find out until their
Yes.
reputation
Yes.
has been affected by it. The blocker, and we see a lot of those in large companies, generally blockers are people who are just preventing growth in the workplace by sitting on their jobs, in their jobs for a long period of time. But the blocker bully is somebody who actually doesn't let another person progress because they're either threatened or intimidated by their talent or intelligence, and continuously prevent them from being exposed into larger meetings or have their voices heard in some positive way.
In your consulting with high-powered executives, people who have egos bigger than this room,
We know a few of those.
that have to be fed regularly. But how do you get them to first accept the fact that they are bullies, that their behavior is bullish? Because they're going to be in denial. They're going to push back at first, and they're going to rationalize it. I am where I am today because of the way I behave.
It's an excellent question, and there is an art to executive coaching,
Yes.
as well as a science. And we approach that. We use a protocol that kind of sneaks up on these issues, and then the data, their data and other people's data are presented to them. And it's not us pushing this theme, it's the data driving it.
Yes.
And that, if we don't get openings there, then chances are, you know, we're not gonna get an opening.
You use 360?
It
We
is
use
a
a 360.
Yeah.
The 360 is one
We
of the
use-
most incredible interventions
Yes.
possible when you're doing some difficult work like Peter and I do all the time at the Leaders.
Describe
Leaders
360
Medicine.
for those who may not be familiar with it.
So what you would do is you would identify with the individual you're coaching 8 to 10 colleagues who have observed that individual in leadership situations, in business meetings, in strategic planning meetings, and you interview them around what their perceptions are of the individual's strengths, development needs, maybe some other questions that are appropriate, their ability to advance, what they need to do to develop strategic relationships, etc. And you tell them that their voice will be anonymous, that the individual being assessed will never know who they are, that we will blend their voice in, along with the other 10 colleagues, into a report that will give this individual powerful, important feedback as to how they're perceived as a leader. And because of the conversational way that we conduct the 360, we don't use computers, we do it personally, we can get an individual to really talk about how they feel about what they've seen this person do and how they've acted in the workplace. And you present that to somebody, as Peter said, it's not our opinion, it's the opinion of the people that work with the individual. It is usually the seminal point in the coaching process that gets the individual's attention.
And then compared to that, if patterns emerge from that set of data, excuse me, we also ask them to do a number of tests for us, assessment tests, and that's their words, other words, their words, when their patterns are in both camps.
Is there a single assessment tool that can test for bullying, or is it an
a
amalgamation
combination.
of?
The Hogan is an instrument we
Hogan?
use with great fondness, and it's based on the earlier work of the NEOPIR, which is kind of a lot of different words on that, but it's, the acronym helps, okay? And, you know, the 360 is really valuable, as Molly said.
Yes.
And the instrument usually supports the themes. So now, if someone denies that information, then, you know,
You have a problem.
This may be an unfair question, but if you have 10 executives or other senior level people with whom you're working, out of that 10, do you expect to be completely successful, or is there a recidivist rate of some kind? 8 out of 10, but there are 2 who are absolutely incorrigible. There's no way you're going to change them.
Well, I think we start out assuming all 10 are going to be helped by our work.
Yeah, of course.
We put other things in there too, like we do a really thorough stakeholder analysis so that we can see where the relationships in the company need to be reset. And then we strategize on how to reset that. So we don't like going in thinking we're only going to get 90%. We like going in and...
What do you test early to determine, to predict whether or not you
It's pretty
expect
clear.
to be
If you're dealing with
successful?
somebody who's not interested or able to change, it's
Right.
pretty clear at the front end.
Uh-huh.
Now, the person is most likely in executive coaching with us because they have leadership potential and the company wants to promote them
Right.
and wants them to fine-tune and enhance their leadership skills. But from time to time, we do get a remedial case where the individual is really told, if you don't change, if you don't make some transformational changes, you may lose your job. So there's leverage there. One way or another, we've been fortunate enough to deal mostly with people who are uncomfortable, scared,
Yes.
but receptive to change.
Even though they may be concerned that it would be a sign of weakness, and therefore
No longer.
undermine their power base.
Well, you mean the idea that they're in coaching?
Or that, no, if they modify their behavior, and it is obvious to other people that they're behaving differently, they're nicer, they're better.
They usually get such positive feedback and
Yeah.
reinforcement right away from the first steps they take, but that doesn't
I remember
happen.
coaching an executive, and he was in line of succession, and he was a West Point grad. And so his success in his career, in his business career, was because he was steeled, and he was decisive, and he was cold and calculating, and he took no prisoners. And that's why he was not going to get the top job. And so I was brought in to see if I could help him see himself differently as others do. And he did change. He accepted some responsibility for it. But after some period of time, he did revert to his former behavior.
Yeah.
Because it was comfortable and it seemed to work for him.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good example of helping an executive, and there's always going to be recidivism to some extent. And so, you just do coaching once every year after
Yes.
initially coach that
Yeah,
person,
a
just to
little
make sure
remedial
they're
work.
on. Yeah, a little remedial work.
Yeah.
But for us, a better example would be, we'd be called in, say, CFO wanted to put his hat in the ring for a CEO position.
Yes.
Okay, CFO have certain skills, CEO have other skills. So preparing the CFO
Yes.
for the CEO role would be something more attuned to
Yeah.
what we would be called in for.
I know it's not in the book, but I'm interested in your opinion. Are there generational differences? Or millennials, 80 million of them, probably more inclined to use bullying to get their way rather than
Well,
boomers?
we were joking about this coming up here, that they're more inclined, if they're being bullied, they'll leave because they come with a skill set that's marketable in more
Yes.
cases than not. So
And they don't tend to be bullies.
They don't tend to be
We
bullies.
haven't experienced that. We see that the more traditional person in the workplace, the older person
Right.
perhaps, or somebody who's been groomed by older people, might use these behaviors more than the millennials who, may get frustrated with the boomers,
Yes.
and our lack of maybe ability to use technology or understand where they're going or keep up with them and
We're a
all
little
that.
slower.
But I've experienced frustration and maybe some impatience, but I haven't experienced some of the bullying that we're talking about, which is more serious.
What do you hope to accomplish with the book? You spent 2 years writing it, is that correct?
yes.
And it was in response to a suggestion you received from, I assume, an employment attorney who saw a high instance of this. But what difference do you hope to make in the workplace?
Well, we believe there are people out there who are being bullied. The costs of bullying not only range from the health of themselves, but also the health of the company.
Yes.
And we see it increasing. And so we feel we can contribute by offering an opportunity for the individual, and we do that through our recommendation of how to deal with each individual bully, because it's slightly different, and based on the collection of critical incidents. And then the critical incidents actually help define the scripts to use. So the growth of the individual, which as an HR person, that's half the job, that comp
Yes.
benefits
Yes.
is the other half. So it's talent development, and it's taking the people out of the company that really squash other people's talent development.
Yes.
Is something we feel strongly about. I mean, that's what we do with our
Yeah.
coaching, making sure our executives don't distill down any negativity.
You can't have an innovative culture
Yeah,
if you have bullying.
And Rick, as an example, I was bullied 3 times in my career because I had to go back and reflect on those incidents. And like the Miami Dolphin that Peter mentioned at the beginning of the conversation, I didn't actually know what to do. I did not know how to confront the bully. I didn't have any resources. And when we did our competitive landscape screen to see what other books were out there were no books out there for the person who's being bullied
Yes.
and helping him or her deal with it effectively. Who do you go to? How do you do those critical incidents and document this so you're absolutely clear you've been targeted? What kind of a bully is it? What kind of a behavior do you want to emanate to be most effective working with that personality? So this is a resource for the 65 million people in the United States who are affected by bullying every year.
Where did that number come from?
The Workplace Bullying Institute.
Really? There's an institute?
It's
Is
been
that right?
operational for 10 years.
Of course there had to be.
Of course, yeah.
I was particularly, and I haven't had a chance to read the book because it hasn't been released yet. But I was particularly interested in an example. Give me a sample of a script for a brute, to deal with a brute, for example? Do you need the Bible?
No.
No, I mean, it depends. I mean, you collect your data first before you go in and
All
just
right.
do that. So you have 5 or 10 critical incidents already
Right.
prepared.
Mm-hmm.
And within those incidents, you yourself will collect information on the circumstances, the actual behavior that the
Mhm.
executive directed at you,
Right.
bully directed at you, and then the consequence. So that's one
So
critical
first you
incident.
do a retrospective,
Yes.
based
you-
on actual experience.
Based on actual experience.
Okay.
And you write that up as
Yes.
kind of the last part of the script. And then you set up a meeting with the bully and you establish what is expected and what is observed. And if those two aren't the same thing, there's always a problem with that.
So I would do that as a subordinate?
As a conversation, as a subordinate.
As a subordinate?
Sure.
Well, you have to stand up for yourself. So if you are holding this person accountable, one thing to know about a brute, and typically that kind of personality, is you don't want to embarrass him in public.
Mm-hmm,
So, but you do want to address it
mm-hmm.
as soon as you can. So you want to make sure you have a meeting as soon after the final incident
Yeah.
that just totally cements the fact that you're being bullied, and confront the individual in a way that he or she can hear.
Mm-hmm.
So it does depend upon the incidents, what you've documented, but this expectation that you're going to work in a civil workplace, and the observation that it's not civil, it's not working well, and he or she is using words, tone of voice, body language that's not acceptable, has to be
In a
addressed.
class I teach on the multi-generational workforce, I say there are 2 phrases that I think are absolutely disarming when someone feels they're being put upon us. And one is, help me understand.
Yeah,
Calmly say,
that's
help me understand.
Yeah,
And the
that's
other
a-
is, how can I help?
Mhm.
And it seems to me that the most brutish person, if you are calm, and you say, help me understand why are you?
Exactly.
That's disarming. It's an invitation to try to close a gap.
You
And
can't
some of
start
my
off
students
with that.
tried it, and they said, my God, it worked.
Yeah, and it takes courage to
It
take
does.
that first step.
It absolutely does.
For sure.
So what's the plan for the book? When's the movie?
Well, we are, yes, well, this year we are all of our extracurricular activities are designed around the book. So we've been speaking a lot of places on radio and public presentations. And being launched this month, we can't wait to
Yes.
see the response and see it in bookstores. So
Do you already have a sequel in mind?
we, we're going to let our audiences define that.
Let the market.
Yeah, let them
Beg for it.
Beg for it.
Hopefully bullying will diminish and we will have a positive
That would be,
sequel.
that would be the best thing.
Is there, the HR program that we both are familiar with, the educational program, are there courses being taught now in undergraduate and graduate level HR degree programs on this subject that you're aware of?
Harvard started some work about 3 years ago on interpersonal competence.
Mhm.
And so that's usually a good bellwether
Right.
of what's going to be derivative
Yes,
and be a
yes.
curriculum at some point in time. Having taught at Wharton, I know that there's 1 or 2 key professors there that bring that content into their
Mhm.
class.
Mhm.
But this does need to be included because the human
It does.
resources individual needs to also know how to deal with it, as does the CEO.
Yeah,
The culture starts at the top, from the
Yes,
CEO down.
absolutely.
And if he or she is unaware of this happening,
Mhm.
they need to read this book.
Mhm.
Think about it.
And we lay out how to set up a policy for a company, for the CEO,
Mhm.
so that if they can buy off on it, then it's
Yes.
just going to distill. I mean, it still floweth downhill,
Yeah.
right? So-
Well, I look forward to reading it.
Yeah.
And thank you for being here. Really
Thank
do
you
appreciate
so
you
much.
taking the time.
Thank you so much.
My guests today have been Peter Dean and Molly Shepard, who are partners in marriage and parenting and in business. And the book is The Bully-Proof Workplace: Essential Strategies, Tips, and Scripts for dealing with the office sociopath. You'll be able to pick it up on Amazon, I assume?
It's on
March
Amazon
17th.
now, and it's in the bookstores March 17th.
Okay. Also, your website can
And
be
you can
purchased?
you can look at it on our website as well.
Okay, terrific. Once again, thanks for being here.
Thank
and
you,
good luck
Rick.
with the book.
Thank you.
Until next time, this is 30 Minutes. I am Rick Anthony. Take very good care of yourselves